What's up, geeks? So, 2019 is here, and 2018 has finally left the building, but I saw some good, I saw some downright bad, and I saw some must-see movies in 2018, and Lord knows that I did not have the time to sit down and make a review video for each and every one of those movies. So here we are. Welcome to my 2018 movie review video. In this video, I will be going through all the movies that I went and saw in theaters in 2018, and I'm going to review them for you, and I'm going to let you know if they're good, bad, or must-see. Now don't worry, I will not be spoiling any of the movies that I cover, and the summaries of the movies. If you really want to look up the actual summary of the movie, just do a quick Google search, because I tried to shorten the summary as much as I could and make it a bit funny. So, if you really want to look up the summary, do a quick Google search. Also, at the end of, the movies that I went and saw in theaters, I have a section of the movies that I just happened to sit down and decided to watch. So I will be covering those movies as well, and don't worry, I will not be spoiling any of those movies in case you haven't seen them, like I hadn't seen them until 2018. So, let's get started. So the first movie that I went and saw in 2018 was The Greatest Showman, and this is a musical movie about the life of P.T. Barnum, the man who created the circus. And for somebody who really doesn't like musical movies, I quite enjoyed this one, especially for the message that this movie brings. So is it a good, a bad, or must-see movie? It is definitely a must-see movie. The next movie that I saw was Black Panther, and wow. This movie is an origin-ish story to the Marvel superhero Black Panther, and the reason why I say it's origin-ish is because this character was introduced in a previous Marvel movie, but they touch more onto it, and this movie, this whole movie is really a big character development for Black Panther, and oh my gosh, this movie was so refreshing for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and gorgeous, and just, oh my gosh, it's nominated for a couple of Oscars, and I hope they win a couple, because this movie is without a question a must-see movie. It's a beautiful cast, beautiful story, it's just done right, and definitely a must-see. The next movie is Pacific Rim Uprising, and I actually did a full review of this movie, so I'll put a link to it in the description below if you want to check it out. Pacific Rim Uprising is the sequel to Pacific Rim, and in Pacific Rim Uprising we follow a character by the name of Jake Pentecost, who is the son of a former character in the first movie. And Jake is a failed Jaeger pilot, but surprise, some kaiju pop up, and he's gotta go into action apparently. Is this a good, a bad, or a must-see movie? It's a good movie. Just like the first one was, there's some things that are just meh about it, so it's definitely a good movie. Next movie is Ready Player One and VR Explosion! That's pretty much how you would describe this whole entire movie. Except there's a game where you're trying to collect keys and win a big Easter egg. Yeah, that's this movie. Is it a good, a bad, or a must-see movie? It's a good movie, I would definitely have to say. There were some things with the plot that I had issues with, like the romance. But other than that, the visuals to this movie were stunning, and it was definitely like a geek's dream just watching it. So it's a good movie. The next movie that I went and saw was none other than Avengers Infinity War. What do I say about this movie other than, hey, we're all here, and unfortunately, so is Thanos. I did a full review to this movie, so I'll put a link to it in the description below, as well as I did a before and after watching Avengers Infinity War video. It's a fun little video, and I'll put that in the description as well if you want to check it out. Is it a good, a bad, or a must-see movie? It is definitely a must-see movie, especially if you are a Marvel fan. If you're not, you got 10 years of Marvel movies you gotta, catch up on so you can understand it all, but don't worry, it's worth it, so it's definitely a must-see movie. Next is Deadpool 2, and a fat kid becomes the target to a knockoff Winter Soldier, and somehow Deadpool's in the mix of it all? I don't know. It is the sequel to the first Deadpool, and I have to say I enjoyed the first Deadpool a whole lot more than this one. So, good, bad, or must see, it's definitely a good movie to watch, but I still enjoyed the first one a whole lot more. Next movie is Incredibles 2, and hey, the family's back, except Elastigirl is being hired to be a superhero, and Mr. Incredible has to stay at home and take care of the kids, and then dun dun dun, villain! So this is a sequel that we have all been waiting for, and what a great sequel. But I have to say, it's only a good movie. Me personally, I was never a huge Incredibles fan when growing up, and I thought the first movie was good, so it's only fitting to say that this was also a good movie as well. Next is the overlooked Marvel movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Unfortunately, not a lot of people went and saw this movie, especially after, the chaos that Avengers Infinity War caused, but an Ant-Man and the Wasp, hey, gotta get the mom. And that is so not a spoiler when it comes to this movie because Marvel kind of spoiled it on its own because Marvel decided to be like, hey, let's put the mom on the poster, so not a spoiler there. Is it a good, a bad, or a must-see movie? It's a good movie. I totally like the first Ant-Man so much better than this one. Just there's too many parties in this movie, so in the end, I just thought it was a good movie instead of a must-see like the first one. The next movie that I went and saw, unfortunately, was none other than The Meg. Look, the movie was about a shark, and not just any shark, but the Megalodon, the biggest shark recorded in history. And I like sharks. My mistake. The only way I can describe this movie is, hey, you like sharks? You like big sharks? That's honestly the only way I can describe this movie. Is it a good, a bad, or a must-see movie? It is definitely a bad movie. I just left that movie so unsatisfied. They should have just made it a rated R movie and just totally had that shark eat so many people up, but just don't even bother. So the next movie I went and saw was Crazy Rich Asians, and I am not a romance movie kind of person whatsoever, but I wanted to go see this movie solely because I wanted to support the all-Asian cast of the movie, and I am actually glad that I went and saw this movie. It is a typical romance movie, but with Asians, and it was really good. So out of a good, bad, must-see, it's definitely a good movie to see. Again, cliche, but it's really good. The next movie I went and saw was Ralph Breaks the Internet. I did a full review to this movie, so link in the description if you want to check it out. And what else to say about this movie than the internet? This movie was a great, fun way of depicting the internet, the good and the bad side of it. So, good, bad, or must-see. It's a good movie, and the only reason why I say it's a good movie is because you'll have to watch my full review if you want to know why I think it's just a good movie, but definitely a good watch. Next movie, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Hey, that's a spider, and that's a spider, and that's a spider, and that's a spider. There's just so many spiders. What do I say about this movie? Oh my gosh, this movie is so good. It is definitely a must-see. I haven't enjoyed an animated movie like this in so long. It's so gorgeous to watch. Epilepsy warning, just giving you that warning, but it's so gorgeous. The story is really good. It's just, oh my gosh, it's definitely a must-see, and congrats to Sony for winning a Golden Globes for this movie. Oh my gosh, go see it. It's a must-see. The next movie is Bohemian Rhapsody, a movie about the legendary band Queen, more specifically the life story of one of the band members, Freddie Mercury, and wow. I've always been interested in his story, and then whenever this movie came out, it was the perfect opportunity to learn about his life, and I have to say that man was very interesting, but he's iconic. No doubt about it. Him, his band, iconic. And good, bad, must-see, definitely a must-see movie. Congrats on winning several Golden Globes for it. It's definitely a must-see movie. Kind of got me, tear-jerking at the end, so definitely a must-see. Next movie is Bumblebee, and what a refreshing movie for the Transformers community. The only way I can describe this movie really is, you like robots? You like the 80s? Bumblebee. Or I could describe it as the robot version of The Shape of Water, because it really kind of had that feel to it. Is it a good, a bad, or a must-see movie? I would say it's a pretty good movie, especially after the fiascos that we've had for a couple of years now. It's definitely a good movie. Next is Mary, Queen of Scots, and it's about the life of Mary, Queen of Scots. What an interesting but sad life she had. You go, Queen, you go. Beautifully shot and just another great documentary-esque style movie like Bohemian Rhapsody, so definitely a must-see. And finally, the last movie that I saw in 2018 was none other than Aquaman. And oh, DC, you can't quite do it like Marvel can. The best way I can describe this movie is fish fighting fish. It's definitely one of the more enjoyable movies that DC has put out. It's still not as good as Wonder Woman, but it's definitely a good movie. So that's it for all the movies that I went and saw in theaters in 2018. Now for the list of movies that I just happened to sit down and watch for the first time in 2018. So let's go. Predator. Gotta go save some people, but wait, aliens? Whenever this movie came out, it was kind of the first of its kind, and whenever you watch it nowadays, it's kind of cheesy, but hey, it's got Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, so it's kind of fun. So good, bad, or must-see, it's definitely a good movie. And I'm not gonna lie, I sat down and I watched the second and third Predator. That's not the title of those movies, but their titles are escaping my mind right now, and just watch the first Predator. That's the only one you need to watch, in all honesty. Speaking of aliens, Alien? How do I describe this movie other than aliens? I understand why this movie is so iconic now. It is shot beautifully, it's told beautifully, it's nightmare-inducing, but it is definitely a must-see movie. Speaking of aliens, how do I describe this movie? Aliens. This is the follow-up movie to Alien, and even though it's a follow-up movie, the tone of this movie is completely different. Wow. This movie is the first of its kind whenever it came out, and it's a follow-up iconic movie to Alien. It really honestly is, so it's definitely a must-see. Next movie is Rampage. I just flipped it on to have something play in the background, and I ended up watching it, and just, how do I describe this movie other than King Kong in a way, but with sign language? This movie was definitely a bad movie. Oh gosh, just don't even bother. Next, Ocean's 8. Hey, I just broke out of prison, but I'm gonna steal this necklace. Great cast, done wonderfully, definitely a good movie. The next movie I watched was The Dressmaker, and the best way I can describe this movie is, hey, thought you seen the last of me? Also, did I murder someone? This movie, I don't know how this movie was overlooked. Maybe because it was done by an Australian company, but like, this movie was so good. This movie got me riled up. This movie was just so good. It's got one of the Hemsworth brothers in it. Like, oh my, it's a must-see. It's such a must-see movie. You'll have to sit down and watch it to find out why, but this movie was so good. Definitely a must-see. The next one is an oldie but goodie, Days of Thunder. Now, let me just say this. I didn't just watch this movie because I like NASCAR, but because I also like Michael Rooker. The only way I can describe this movie is NASCAR rivalry, and like I said, it's an oldie but goodie, so it's definitely a good movie. Speaking of movies with Michael Rooker in them, The Belko Experiment. And the best way I can summarize this movie is, you either gotta kill people or I kill you. Warning, this movie has a lot of gore in it, but in the end, what an interesting concept, and I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, so definitely a good movie. The next movie is another iconic one, The Shining. And the best way I can describe this movie is, here's Johnny. Now, listen, I am not a huge horror fan, and I was squirming the entire time watching this movie, and in the end, I understand why it's so iconic, so it's definitely a must-see movie. The next movie won 2018 Best Picture at the Oscars, and let me just tell you, it definitely deserves it, and that is The Shape of Water. You know that kid that says, "I like turtles"? Well, the best way to describe this movie is, "I like fish." This movie is beautiful. The story is beautiful, even if it is about a woman and a fish monster. But it is definitely a must-see movie. I understand why it won Best Picture at the Oscars, so definitely a must-see. Next is Dunkirk. And the only way that I can describe this movie is a first-person view of the events that happened at the Dunkirk beach in World War II. This movie was done so interestingly that I definitely would have to say it's a must-see. Next movie is Crimson Peak, and I would love to tell you the plot of this movie, but for the life of me, I still cannot fully understand the plot to this movie. So please, go watch it. Let me know what the plot is. It's beautifully shot. It's another Del Toro movie. It's gorgeous, just I still cannot understand the plot. So, good, bad, or must-see, it's a good movie. Last but not least, Kong Skull Island. Now, I only watched this movie because Tom Hiddleston is in it, and let me just say, if anybody in that movie deserves an award, it's the shirt that he wears throughout that movie, because my gosh, that shirt had to put up with so much stuff, beautiful acting from the shirt, and most importantly, tight. The way I can describe this movie is blow it up. Literally, blow it up. Good, bad, or must-see? It's definitely a bad one, unfortunately. So, that's all the movies that I went and saw in theaters, as well as sat down and watched for the first time in 2018. So long, and hello, 2019. What movies are you most excited about seeing coming out in theaters in 2019? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you all had a wonderful 2018. Here's to a spectacular 2019. Even though by the time I'm recording this video, it's already mid-January. What can I say? I was on break. But anyways, if you like this video, click the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more geeky videos whenever I put them out, hit the subscribe button. But as always, stay geeky, my friends.